Mister, excuse me, but my connection is weak.
Okay, no problem. Try to fix it. Okay, guys, so the first passage that we have here is telling us a story about a 10-year-old boy named Sandeep. Sandeep travels with his mother, his aunt, and his uncle to visit family in Calcutta, India. The first question that we have here, and actually it's the only question that we have in this passage, is question number 9. And that's the evidence question that we have here. It's not related to the previous question. This time they're asking us which lines from the passage most strongly suggest that India has experienced social change. So these two words are my keywords here, and these are the words that are going to help me to find the answer to the question. So social change, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. So since it's question number 9 out of 10, and here, you know, it's at the end of the set of the passage, it's going to be A or B because those lines are very early in the passage. So we can start immediately with C because we said the questions follow the order of the information that we have in the passage. And in option C, we have actually these lines. Here. So here we have the lines. Of course, it starts a little bit before, like the son and daughter-in-law emerged shyly from the anteroom. They both stooped gently to touch Chotomama's feet and Sandeep's aunt's and his mother's feet. Now, why are they trying to do this? Because this is a traditional greeting and a mark of obeisance, which means obedience towards one's elders. Oh, no, 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 said Chotomama. Of course, this is the uncle. So he's saying no to this traditional greeting where they try to gently touch the feet of the, you know, of the elders. And he said, there is no need for all of this. Now, this was half a token gesture towards modesty and half towards the new modern India. Nehru's secular India, free of ritual and religion. This is the change that we are talking here, because we have a tradition in the past where if somebody meets his or her elders, they need to bow and touch their feet. But here, when the uncle is saying there is no need for all of this, and then the author is commenting on this, the author is saying that this was a gesture towards modesty, modern India. What kind of India is this? It's secular India, free of ritual and religion. So these lines are telling us about the social change here. And that's why if we look at the options that we have in 9, of course, the answer is C. Lines 54 through 57. And that's what we have here in this passage. Now, if we move to the other one, it's talking about how we understand what others think, believe, feel, and want. And from the very beginning, here we have knowing your own reputation can be surprisingly difficult. Okay, so we're talking about how others view us, how they think about us, and how they feel about us. Just a second, sorry, I'm just facing some difficulties here. Okay. So here, as you can see, consider a study that analyzed a set of published experiments, all sharing the same basic design. In these experiments, people working in a group would be asked to predict how the other group members would rate them on a series of different traits. And then they tell us about the results that they discovered in these, or they, could find in these experiments. Now, see the questions that we have to answer here about this passage. We have the first question, number 15. Now, that's a vocabulary in context question, and it's asking us about the word magnitude and what it means. Okay? So as usual, since this is in line 35, we go there in the passage. It's very close to the beginning of the paragraph, so it's much better if we start from the beginning. And here they're telling us that first we have the good news. What is the good news? These experiments suggested that people are pretty good at guessing how a group of others would evaluate them, and that's on average. The overall correlation in these experiments between predicted impressions and the actual impression of the group was quite high. So they made this scale. So we have the predicted impression. For example, somebody thinks that this group of people think that he or she is funny or strict. There are many different traits. And then when we look at the actual impression of this group, we have from 0 to 1. 1 is the highest level of correlation. So here they're telling us that they found that, when we talk about a group of others, people are pretty good at guessing how this group views them. And then they said, to put that in perspective, this is roughly the same magnitude. So this is now the word we are asked about. As what? As the correlation between the heights of fathers and heights of sons, and that's around 0.5. So now we're talking about the magnitude of what? Of the correlation. Okay, and here the correlation, as we said, it's between the predicted impressions and the actual impression. So they found that actually people are good at guessing how a group of people would view them, and that's the magnitude of the correlation. Okay, so now when we think about magnitude, first of all, the first word we have to eliminate is C, severity, because this is a negative word. Okay, and it doesn't work here. The same reality of the correlation, no, it doesn't work. So it can, now we have only two options, influence or strength. But here the influence of what? Of the correlation, what is it influencing? What is it affecting? It doesn't work. So the answer is A. It's the same strength. Why? Because we said that the level was 0.5 for the heights of sons and the heights of fathers. And this is similar to the magnitude of the correlation that we have in this between the predicted impressions and the actual impression. It was 0.55. So here I'm talking about the strength of the correlation, how strong it is. And that's on a scale from 0 to 1. So it doesn't make sense to use the word influence here. Okay, and as we said, severity is a negative word. If something is severe, it's strong, but in a negative way, harsh, difficult, tough, and that's not what we want here. Now, when we move to question number 16, this question is about the tone of the passage and what effect these words, clueless in line 38 and mind reading in line 61, have on the tone. Okay, so let's see. Of course, as usual, we need the context. So we start with the first word, which is clueless. Here they're telling us, so as we said, when it comes to the correlation between the predicted impressions and the actual impression, we said it's 0.55. Now they're telling us it's not a perfect insight, but it's also very far from being clueless. And of course, clueless means somebody who doesn't have any idea. So they're telling us, yes, 0.55 out of 1 is not a perfect insight, but at the same time, it's not, or it's very far from just being clueless. Yahya and Tasneem and Jannah, please open up your cameras. Okay, so here we have the word clueless. If we think about the other word they asked us about, which is in line 61, now, of course, we moved from the predicted impression of a group to an individual, okay? And then they said here that the accuracy rate across these experiments, which is about individuals, not a group of people, was barely better than random guessing. And what was the correlation? It was 0.13. It's much lower than the predicted impression of a whole group. So you can guess, we are good at guessing how a group of people view us. But when it comes to individual people, we're not really good at that. And the correlation was only 0.13 between the predicted and the actual evaluations. Although you might have some sense of how smart your coworkers think you are, you appear to have no clue about which coworkers in particular find you smart. So maybe you are correct. Generally, the group of coworkers you work with think that you are smart. Okay, so you can guess that, but you cannot guess who exactly thinks you are smart and who thinks that you are, you know, not smart or normal and so on. Now, as one author of the study writes, people seem to have just a tiny glimmer of insight into how they are uniquely viewed. And again, why are we using the word uniquely here? Because we're talking about individuals by particular other people. And the question about this comment, so keep that in mind. Here the author is saying people seem to have a tiny glimmer of insight into how they are uniquely viewed by particular other people, which is, you know, contrary to when we guess how a group of people view us. Now, here we have the line now. But perhaps this is holding your mind reading abilities too high to a standard. It's hard, after all, to define traits like intelligence and trustworthiness precisely. So it might not be so surprising that we have difficulty guessing how others will evaluate on these ambiguous traits. So in general, guys, if we think about these two words, clueless and read-minding, are they like kind of positive or kind of negative? And I read a little bit more than just
Negative.
the specific lines. Negative, right? Why is it negative, guys? For example, the negative ones that we have here, like B, they contribute to a slightly mocking and disapproving tone that reinforces the author's criticisms of researchers' conclusions. That's very strong and very negative. We cannot use that. There is no mocking, making fun. There is no disapproving tone. And here, you know, there is no criticism to the conclusions. So B absolutely doesn't work. It's very negative. If you think about C, it's also negative because it says that these words contribute to a deeply pessimistic tone that stresses the impossibility of ever knowing how people truly perceive each other. Again, this is negative and it's too negative, and that's why it doesn't work. They contribute to a thoughtful yet uncertain tone that casts doubt on the real world usefulness of experimental data. We can keep this and compare it with A. A says that these words contribute to a casual and a little bit gently humorous tone. Okay, and that's why we have the word clueless, mind reading. The author is not trying to criticize anybody. The author is not trying to make fun of anybody. It's just because here we have, you know, a specialized discussion, and the author is just trying to make it more relatable to us, more approachable by using these humorous words. So actually the best answer here is A. And these words can be used in this specific part as something kind of positive to engage the readers in the study. Okay, so the answer is A. I cannot say, of course, for sure, I cannot say that it's pessimistic or, you know, disapproving. That's too strong to say that. About uncertain, the uncertainty, it's about how people can be viewed by individuals, but not about the experimental data. That's the difference for D. And that's why it doesn't work. All right, now let's move to question number 17. So as I told you, there's a comment by one of the authors of the study who said that people seem to have a tiny glimmer of insights about how they are uniquely viewed by particular other people. And here we have what kind of view of the study results is expressed in that quote. Okay. They indicate that there is a small but promising chance of correctly predicting how one is perceived. We can keep it for now. They show that individuals generally know very little. Okay, so far everything is good because a tiny glimmer of insight. So they know very little, but about what? About how they are regarded by groups? No, we said that people are pretty good when they are predicting about groups of people, but not about individuals. So B is wrong. That's the difference. Yes, they know very little, but not about how groups, view them. It's about how individuals see them or view them. They reveal that one individual hardly knows what another individual thinks of him or her. Yes, that's exactly what we're saying here. Again, that we're good with groups, but not really good with individuals. They confirm that one's predictions about other people's impressions are no better than random guesses. No, that's very general. And it works if they just specified that it's about the individuals. So the best answer here is C, because we moved from groups to individuals. And that's why the author added this quote here to support this idea. So they reveal that one individual hardly knows what another individual thinks of him or her. Does that make sense? يا عيني على الكاميرات المسكرة. شوفوا جنى وتسنيم أمورهم تمام متابعين معنا. أسامة يعني عم تصور لي السقف، بالله عليك أنا عم بدي أحكي معك ولا بدي أحكي مع السقف؟ فرجيني وشك الحلو يا أسامة. يحيى محمد. I know that you are texting me, guys, but again, we need to find a solution. We cannot just say it's not working. I can do this now. I cannot do that now. We have only 2 sessions a week, so you have to be prepared and ready, whether it's the internet, the device, your room. I don't know what kind of excuse you have. But again, I need to feel that you are here with me. Okay. And now we're done with question number 17. 18, we have no problem. The answer is D. And I think that everybody got the right answer. So 18, the answer is D. And now we come to question number 19. 19 is about the figure that follows the passage. And it's a tricky question, so please follow with me, okay? Here the question is saying that the mean correlation that most nearly approaches complete agreement. That's your most important keywords that you can get here, okay? So most nearly approaches complete agreement. Focus on that. Complete agreement exists between individual self-perception and what? Now, when you look at agreement, I think that what can go in our mind is that we try to look at the 2 colors, the dark gray and the light gray. And we try to find that, for example, here there is no complete agreement. And here, yeah, this is almost near, complete agreement, and here is the same thing. But remember the steps that we follow, okay? The steps are, after we read the title, we have to look at Y and X. Because if I think about that, there's actually no noticeable difference between B and C, and we're going to be confused. But if you read here, they're telling us here about the mean correlations, and they're telling us that 1 is the complete agreement, 0 is the complete disagreement. And they want us to give them the, the column that is almost complete agreement. And now what do we find out? That actually they don't mean the agreement, but is the difference between these 3 columns, whether it's, light gray or dark gray. This is the one that we're looking for. because here's 0.9, which is almost complete agreement. Because here they said 1 is the complete agreement, and here 0.9, so it's almost there. And now the answer becomes very easy, because they gave us the first half. They said it's between self-perception, and we just need to give them this one, right? And those individuals' predictions of how others perceive them. But again, since here we have 2 different columns in different colors, and this is the dark gray, so we need to keep in mind that which kind of others? Those who are well acquainted with them, like they know them very well. Because no acquaintance simply means that a person who has just got to meet you and they don't know a lot about you. So that's the answer. The answer is a combination of these 2. First of all, I need to understand that this is the one that's near complete agreement, which means this is A. So I need the second half of the descriptor, which is here, in addition to keeping in mind that I'm talking about the well-acquainted, not the new acquaintance. Okay? So now when we look at the options, so again, so the one that approaches complete agreement, it's between the self-perception and, of course, we read what we have in the descriptor. We said it's about how the others perceive them, and we said it's well acquainted. So how those individuals are actually perceived by new acquaintances? No, we said well acquainted. So A doesn't work. Actual perceptions of those individuals by people with whom they are well acquainted? No. Why? Because here, yes, well acquainted, that part is correct, but the part that's not correct is what? It's the actual perceptions. But if you go back to the descriptor we have in A, they don't say the actual, they said the individual's predictions of how they perceive them, not the actual perception. There's a difference. Here, it's the predictions of the actual perception. But in option B, what do we have? We don't have the prediction, we have just the actual perception, and that's the difference. So A is wrong because no acquaintances. B is wrong not because of that, it's because of the actual perceptions. And we need the predictions, guys. If you look at C, the individual's predictions of how they are perceived. So far, everything is good. We just need the well acquainted, and we find it here. So C is the right answer. Did we get to know how to answer this question now? Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes, Mr.
Okay. Whenever, guys, look, I keep going with the discussion, but whenever at any single point you feel that you need a little bit more elaboration, clarification, you don't understand the point, or you have a question to ask, or you have a comment to add, just feel free to open up your microphone and just go ahead with your comment, okay? Because when I keep going with the discussion, I just assume that everything I'm saying and every answer we are choosing is fine with you. Okay, so if you have anything other than that, you have to tell me. And of course, D is wrong because they are saying that it's new as well as old acquaintances. And of course, that's not the same. Okay, that's the wrong part in D. So remember, it's not just enough to look at an answer and you like it and you choose it. It's not about what you like and what you dislike. It's about the analysis of each option. For example, A, we cross this part. B, we cross this part. D, we cross this part. You have to know which part of the answer makes it wrong. And you have to know, of course, on the other hand, what makes the answer that you choose is correct. It's all about analyzing, and it's simply by picking up the keywords. And that's what we always focus on. All right, and now we're done with this passage. There are no more other questions on this passage, so we can move to the third one. The third one is talking about space, the solar system, and more specifically, they're talking about Ceres. So here they're telling us that, has Pluto sent us a message in Ceres? So let's start reading to understand what this is about, and then we can go to the questions, okay? So does Pluto have a wayward cousin lurking in our solar system? Dwarf planet Ceres and other icy chunks may have been born in the same realm as Pluto. And of course, anybody who has a basic, knowledge of the solar system, we know that Pluto first was identified as a planet, but it's in the outer, solar system, because the solar system is divided into two parts. We have 8 planets. We have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. These are the inner planets. And then we have Jupiter, Uranus. What else do we have? Saturn and Neptune. Thank you so much. So these are the outer planets. Now, at the beginning, they thought that Pluto is also a planet. But of course, then it was identified that it doesn't meet the criteria for, a terrestrial object to be identified as a planet. And they said it's a dwarf planet. And they're talking about a similar object, Ceres. And they're telling us that this dwarf planet, Ceres, it may have been, so there's a speculation here, born in the same area, realm, as Pluto. But what's the difference? Because now it's in the, we call them the asteroid belt, because that's why we call them inner and outer, because in between these 4 planets and the other 4 planets, we have asteroids, and the area is called the asteroid belt. So they said, however, the difference between Pluto and Ceres is that Ceres traveled all the way to the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. If so, it would be further evidence that a massive upheaval rearranged the early solar system. Okay, so that's the issue. They're telling us, okay, if Ceres is a dwarf planet just like Pluto, why is Pluto in the outer part of the solar system, and what is Ceres doing in the asteroid belt? They say that, okay, what we think now is that it might have been born in the same place or area as Pluto, but it traveled to the asteroid belt. And then, of course, they go on with the details about Ceres. We're not going to start with the whole passage. Let's go immediately to question number 24. Question number 24, it's an easy question, inshallah. And it says, according to the passage, so I know that's a statement question. So it's a detail that's directly mentioned in the passage, and I can find it easily. The nice model is based on which idea? That's it. That's what you're looking for, right? Now, for the previous question, which is 23, guys, the evidence was in D, okay? Lines 20, 23. So, of course, we follow the sequence of the lines. So, here, we are looking for what? Remember the keywords, nice model. And they're just telling us what is the idea that the nice model is based on, okay? So, if Ceres formed in Pluto's neighborhood, how did it end up 2 to 4 billion years away? That's the question now. Some researchers think that the orbits of the planets were once unstable. Of course, every planet has an orbit that, it goes, around the sun. But they said that earlier they were unstable, the orbits. According to this idea, what is this idea? It's known as the nice model. So now we know what idea the nice model is based on. It's that the orbits earlier were unstable. But let's continue reading a little bit. So they say that according to this idea, Uranus and Neptune went rampaging, moving violently through the outer solar system around 3.9 billion years ago. And as a result, many of the icy objects that formed in the outer solar system were pulled inward by the gravity of these 2 planets, and some ended up joining the rocky asteroids that were born in the asteroid belt. That's the explanation that the scientists have. How did Ceres come to the asteroid belt? They said, okay, the orbits were unstable. We have 2 giant planets, which are Uranus and Neptune. These 2 planets were moving violently in the outer solar system. And because they have a huge or a very strong gravity, they pulled some asteroids into the inner solar system. And that's how Ceres came to this area. With this understanding, the question will be answered very, very easily and very quickly. Because now, what is the idea here? Uranus and Neptune were not always locked into their current orbital paths. And that's the answer. Because they said that the orbits were once unstable. And because these two planets were moving violently in the solar system, they pulled some asteroids in using their huge or strong gravity. So the answer is A. So again, just pick up your keywords, nice model, go back, find the sequence here. For example, even if you didn't get the answer D, for example, like even if you didn't get the answer here correctly, it's fine. But you know that the area for the previous question ends at these lines. So you have to know that the nice model is supposed to be found after that. You read, you highlight keywords, you ask yourself questions, and you connect the information together so that you can get the right answer. Let's move to 25. 25, it's about the word simply in line 34. Okay, let's go there. So now, after our explanation that we read, look, again, it's the same sequence. So after we talked about how the gravity of these two planets help them to pull some objects inward, they said Ceres would simply be the largest of these immigrants. So Ceres would simply be the largest of these immigrants. The odds for this seem low, but it's not inconceivable. So we have a researcher here saying that, you know what, it is not inconceivable. I mean, it could work, but the expectation for this, or the, let's say, the reality of this is low. Now let's think about how Ceres would simply be the largest of these immigrants. Now, of course, the first two options that don't work, first of all, sincerely. Why would we say Ceres would sincerely be the largest? It doesn't make sense here. Or even wholly. Now we have a problem here. We have plainly, which means clearly, and we have merely, which means only. Okay? The thing is, and the trick is, we know that Ceres is, you know, a dwarf planet. So it's not just a small asteroid. But in this specific context, we cannot or we cannot actually say that Ceres is obviously or clearly the largest one. We don't know, because again, we have no basis for that. What if in another passage or in another article, actually there are bigger asteroids or dwarf planets than Ceres? So look, you're gonna work it out as which words make sense. C also works, but remember that our test is called evidence-based. And so far, in this specific point, we have no actual evidence is only or is clearly the biggest. Okay, that's why C is wrong. So not because it doesn't make sense, but it just because it's not supported by any evidence in the passage. Maybe later on, maybe we can find information like that. But at this point, we cannot say that it's clearly the largest. So the answer is D. And here would be like this. Ceres would simply be the largest, which means would only be the largest at that point.
Wait, if we choose C, it means
All right.
only? Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yep.
If we choose C, it would mean only?
No, it would mean clearly.
I didn't get it. Can you say
It's
why
just
not?
again about the evidence. We have no evidence to say that at this specific point that Ceres would be easily the biggest. Okay, because plainly, what does it mean? It means many different things. Okay, now one of them is honestly, just like sincerely, because look, plainly means easily, it means obviously, it means honestly. So it has different meanings. And to tell you the truth, again, I told you that this is tricky. So I don't really blame you for this specific question if you chose plainly. But sometimes, you know, they try to make it a little bit philosophic in some questions. And the main difference now between plainly and merely is that merely means what? Only, right? While plainly means three different things. It can mean easily or perceived easily. It means obviously or clearly, and it means honestly. So they are playing on these three different meanings of the word. While merely, I'm pretty sure up to 90% that it only has one meaning, which is only. So we would go for merely, not for plainly. Because, for example, one of the meanings of plainly is sincerely, honestly. And that's why they say it's wrong.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
If the sentence was serious, would simply be the one of these immigrants. Can we choose plainly?
Ya binti, why do you always imagine different scenarios?
Just
Well, ya
thinking.
Radwa, you know what? You have to be an author. And I'm not making fun, really. I'm serious. Because you have a great imagination. And if you work it out in the specific area, you're going to be a creative person. Do you like writing, Radwa?
Yes.
Are you
I
into
do.
writing?
I tried to write once. Yeah. It was a habit.
Okay, maybe you need some support.
Thank you.
Welcome. But again, as I said, why? Here is why. Plainly has three different meanings. One of them is just like B, which says sincerely, plainly means honestly. While merely it has only one meaning. And that's why, for example, here we go to the safe side and we choose it. That's it. Yes, yes, Jana, that also can work. Now, let's see here. Yes, we're talking now about 27 and 26, and they are related to each other, of course. So here, let's see first the keywords as usual. So they say based on the passage. So remember this one, what does it mean based on the passage? It means that it's an inference. Okay, it's not a directly mentioned detail. It's not a statement. Now, Podka and Levisan's conclusions. So these two researchers' conclusions would be, again, look, would, because it's an inference, would be most weakened by a study that. What is the study that would weaken their conclusions? Now, if you look at the trick that we usually use, the previous question 34 and the question that's after 60, but all the options for 27 are between 34 and 60. That means that we are going to read them all one by one, okay? But I'm going to save your time, and for 27, I can tell you in D, okay? So we're gonna read it together, and then we're gonna to match it with the other options. And then if you have any question, you can ask me. So let's go now to lines 49 and 53, or through 53. See, what are they saying? So again, the names are mentioned again here. Look, Podka and Levisan's computer simulations show that the observed number of objects is about right. So they have a simulation, or actually a group of simulations, and they show them that the number of objects is about right if they are immigrants. though they have assumed many of the objects broke up after transport. Okay, so that's what they're saying, that the number of objects that they have there in the asteroid belt is about right if they are immigrants. However, what they assume that many of these objects broke up after transport. And transport here, of course, it refers to moving from the outer solar system into the asteroid belt. Okay, so that's the evidence that we have here about what would weaken. So remember, now you're going to choose the opposite. Now you're going to draw a conclusion, because that's not a statement question, it's an inference question. So now we understand that they assumed many of the objects broke up when? After transport. So what would weaken their study or their conclusions? If we have a study that says that actually very few objects broke after migrating. So the difference here is that they said many of the objects broke up after transport. Here we have the exact same words, except for very few. Because in the passage, what do we have? We have the word many of the objects broke up after the transport. But here we have very few. So if we have a study demonstrating and emphasizing that not many, only very few objects broke up after migrating, after transport, then of course that would weaken Botke and Levisohn's conclusions the most. That's the difference. And remember, guys, most of the time when we have an inference, you're going to assume the opposite. Like if you remember last time when we were talking about the plant that uses camouflage to protect itself, we said that in the passage, this plant doesn't need the green coloration to make its food. And that's why it has a wider range of colors that would help itself to defend itself and escape predators. If you still remember that question. And the inference was not about this plant, but about the other plants. And they said, okay, so what can we understand about the other plants? And the answer was that since the other plants need the green coloration, they have a limited options for defense, because they can just be green. They need the green coloration to make food. So they give you one, two parts of one group, and they are opposite to each other. And one part is in the passage, the other one is in the question. So what we have in the passage here is many objects broke up after transport. So what would weaken this theory or this conclusion? If we have another study saying that actually it's not many, it's just very few objects that broke up after transport. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's move to 33. Of course, that means that we are done with this.
27 is D.
Which one?
Can you show us why 27 is D?
27.
Yeah, the evidence.
Yeah, we read it.
Yeah,
We said that they based their evidence assuming that many objects broke up after transport. Okay? And
okay.
Here's the thing, like if you read 39 to 41, what would you see? You would see that, for example, let's go there and show you how this works. 39 to 41. Look, they said that Botke and Hal Levisohn led a pair of studies which support the idea of refugees from outer solar system orbiting in the asteroid belt. Okay? Now, of course, after you choose this evidence, you need to match it with one of the ideas. And when you read them, for example, look, you look at A, it was talking about heat. You look at B, it's talking about the orbits and how they were unstable. You look at C, and it's talking about how many objects broke up after transport. You look at D, and they're talking about not all immigrants from the outer solar system. And here's the thing. In lines 39 and 41 to 41, we can match, for example, the evidence in A, 27, to the idea in D, right? But let's think about it. if we have a study that proved that not all migrants came from the outer solar system, does that weaken their idea that they support the idea that there are immigrants from the outer solar system? No, because here they said not all immigrants. Okay, so we still have some other immigrants, and so on. So whenever you read any option for the evidence, A, B, C, and D, it's fine, go and explore them. But the thing is, can you match it with one of the options for the previous question? For example, if you read again, A, for the first time, is going to seem pretty reasonable, and you can choose it. The problem here is not in the evidence. The problem is you don't have a matching idea in the previous question. So try to match the evidence in B and C to ideas in the previous question. You will see that actually there's no matching idea. That's the point. Got it?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. All right, now we have here a set of paired passages. Let's see what they're talking about. هن بتقاتلوا مع بعض ونحن بنقعد بنحلل لهم كلامهم. Does that work? Is that fair, guys? It's not fair. Okay, so passage 1 by Patrick Henry, and then we have passage 2 by Edmund Pendleton. So these two passages are adapted, taken from speeches. So everybody gave a speech. And these speeches were delivered to the Virginia Ratifying Convention in 1788. Now, both are in response to the proposal by the 1787 Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. So look, here's how you need to think about it. It all started in 1787. What happened? There was a constitutional convention. There was, you know, a summit, a conference, a meeting about the Constitution. And in that convention, what did they say? They wanted to replace the Articles of Confederation with a new constitution establishing a national government. And after that, in 1788, after 1 year, we have another convention called Virginia Ratifying Convention. And then we have these two speeches in response to what happened in 1787. So of course you will find that somebody is supporting maybe the Constitutional Convention and somebody is against it, or maybe both of them are against the Constitutional Convention, but in different ways. Okay? Now, let's start. So as I said, we have questions. First of all, let's start with 33. And I know why actually the majority of you guys got this question wrong. Maybe because you didn't know where Virginia is. Because the question is asking, Henry states that Virginia differs from other areas of the country in that what? So where's Virginia? And that's why, guys, you have to go back to the blurb. The blurb is saying that these are taken from speeches, and these speeches were delivered where? In the Virginia Convention, right? So you read and read and read, and look, that's number one. I'm gonna continue with that, but let me just tell you about number two. You will see that question number 34, which is the second question, and these are the only two questions about passage 1, and it's about lines 33, 35. That's another hint that the answer is close to these lines. Number 1, look at the blurb, and you will see that this speech was given in Virginia. That's number 1. Number 2, if you look at question 34, you would notice that it's about the lines 33 to 35. So the answer for 33 must be close to that. So we read the blurb and we know that this speech is given in Virginia. How does that help? Do you want me to tell you the secret? Wallah ya Jama'ah, you seem not interested. Wala ala balkum if I give you the secret or if I don't give you. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Of course you are interested. Otherwise you wouldn't be here bearing this discussion. So look, he was saying that the people gave them no power to use their name. And of course here he's talking about the national government. That they exceeded their power is perfectly clear. So now we understand that when it comes to the Constitutional Convention, it's clear that Pendleton is against it, because he said that these people who are trying to create a national government, they have no power to use the people's name. and that they exceeded their power. It's not just curiosity that their power, that actuates me. So he's not motivated only by curiosity. I wish to hear the real, actual, existing danger, which should lead us to take those steps. So dangerous in many conception. Now, here's the answer, guys. Disorders have arisen in other parts of America. And remember, the question was saying that he states that Virginia is different from other areas. So disorders have arisen in other parts of America, but here, no dangers, no insurrection, no tumults have happened. So where is here, guys? Who can tell me? Where is here?
Virginia.
Virginia. That's it. So the main difference is that in the other parts of the country, we have what? We have dangers, we have tumult, we have insurrection, but in Virginia, no. So what does that mean? Maybe let's say, I don't understand what insurrection means or tumult. Just be patient and keep reading. You will see that everything has been calm and tranquil. And that's the opposite to what's happening in other parts of the country. Now, what is the main difference between Virginia and the other areas of the country? Who can tell me now?
No,
It's more peaceful and calm.
Yes. So there is no evidence of civil unrest. And the answer is A. Does that make sense now?
Yes.
الله يخلينا إياك يا يحيى. طيب. 34, we have no problem. I believe that most of us got the right answer, and it is B, uncertainty. We can go and look at that very quickly in lines 33, 35. So again, but notwithstanding this, we are wandering on the great ocean of human affairs. So he's using here, of course, figurative language. He's describing human affairs as a great ocean, and we are wandering, which means we are walking aimlessly. I see no landmark to guide us. We are running, we know not whither, which means we are running to a place we don't know. Difference of opinion has gone to a degree of inflammatory resentment in different parts of the country, which has been occasioned by this perilous innovation. So simply he's saying the human affairs is a wide space, it's an ocean. We don't know where we are going. There's no landmark to guide us. All of this figurative language suggests what? Of course, it's uncertainty. So the answer is B. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Inshallah. Now, we have 35. 35 is asking now about question or passage 2. Pendleton indicates that the phrase "we the people" is what? Now remember, in passage 1, the author here, who is Patrick Henry, he discussed the idea of "we the people" because he said here, if you remember, I have the highest veneration for those gentlemen. Veneration means respect. So he's saying that I highly respect those gentlemen who were supposed to, make the constitutional renovation and the national government. But sir, give me leave to demand. And of course here, leave means permission. Give me the permission to demand. What right had they to say "we the people"? So he's saying that these people who were responsible for the national government did not have the right to use the people's name by saying "we the people." My political curiosity, exclusive of my anxious solicitude for the public welfare, leads me to ask, who authorized them to speak the language of the "we people" instead of "we the states"? So he's saying that these people who are working on the Constitution should be representing the states and not the people, not the public. But of course, الباسج 2 author بيسكت له؟ ما بيسكت له. شوف والله شو راح يقول له. And that's what the question is about. He refers to what Henry was saying by saying that an objection is made to the form, the expression we the people is thought improper. Of course, he's talking to him. He's saying like, okay, but of course in an indirect way, because they are in a convention and they cannot argue or fight. So he makes these statements publicly and generally. So he says an objection is made to the form, the expression we the people is thought improper. And again, look, here he uses the same style. Permit me to ask the gentleman who made this objection. Who made this objection, guys? Do you remember? Yalla?
The first
Henry.
Yeah, Patrick Henry, the author of Passage 1. He was the one who's objecting the use of we the people. So he's saying now, عم يردح له يعني من الأخير. Permit me to ask the gentleman who made this objection. Who but the people can delegate powers? Who but the people have a right to form government? The expression is a common one and a favorite one with me. The representatives of the people by their authority is a mode holy and essential. If the objection be that the union ought to be not of the people but of the state government, then I think the choice of the former, what is the former? The people. Because we have people and governments, state governments. So of course, former people, later governments. Then I think the choice of the former very happy and proper. That's it. So he's just challenging him. He's saying, no, this term is very happy and very proper. And he's also saying that this expression is a common one and it's a favorite one with me. That's it. So he holds a different opinion than what we have in passage 1. He agrees with the expression we the people. So he finds it objectionable to most citizens? No, that's the point of view of author Henry Patrick or Patrick Henry, not Bentelton. So what does he find it? He finds it common, favorite, happy, and proper. So the answer is B. It's appropriate. Proper is the same as appropriate for the proposed type of government.
Henry thinks it's
Is that correct?
improper.
Yes, proper means appropriate.
No,
For
no,
example, if I tell you, talk to me properly. What does that mean, properly?
no. Appropriately.
In an appropriate way. Dorumu. Right?
The author of the first passage says that it's improper.
Yeah. But here the question is about passage 2.
Okay.
صح سماية تسنيم.
Mr. in passage 1, line number 15.
Line 15?
Yeah, give me leave to demand. What is the meaning of that expression?
Give me leave to demand.
Yeah.
Give me the permission to ask. Because here demand means ask and leave means permission. And remember, this is old language because it's in 1788. Yani, you don't find these expressions a lot nowadays. But in the past, this was the formal language. Remember, they are in a convention, so they are using formal language. اتفقنا?
Yes.
Right, great. Now we can skip the other questions and go to questions 41 and 42, and they're related to each other. And they're saying here that Henry would most likely have responded to Pendleton's claim about the members of the convention by asserting that they what? Okay, and that means we have to go to passage 2 and see what this person said about these members and how would the author of passage 1 respond to that. So let's see here. So we can still depend on the same lines that we have here, that these people, you know, they are representing the people of the USA, not just the states or the state governments. And if you continue, of course, he was talking about the confederation. If you remember here, he was saying that suppose the paper on your table dropped from one of the planets. The people found it and sent us here to consider whether it was proper for their adoption. Must we not obey them? Then the question must be between this government and the confederation. The latter, and again, whenever you have two things guys mentioned before, and you have the word the former or the latter, the former refers to the first one, and the latter refers to the second. Here we have government and then confederation, and then we have the latter. So what does it refer to? Which of them?
Confederation.
Confederation.
Good. So he was saying that the latter is no government at all. It has been said that it has carried us through a dangerous war to a happy issue. But of course, he's negating that. He's saying not that confederation, but common danger and the spirit of America were bonds of our union on unanimity, and not the insignificant paper. Again, what is the insignificant paper? It's the confederation carried us through that dangerous war. So he's saying that that confederation didn't work. It was not a government even. It didn't help the people of the USA through that dangerous war. Okay? And that's why he thinks that people here, he says now here at the end, look, though now forgotten by gentlemen, if such there be who incline to let this stronghold to catch at feathers, for such all substituted projects may prove. So he's proving their projects because they are, you know, about to change the whole thing. Okay? هلا Henry أكيد رح ينتف له شعره. He will not agree with that, right? Where do we find that? Look, let's go back to passage 1. It's here. Okay? He was saying that the Federal Convention ought to have amended the old system. For this purpose, they were solely delegated. So according to Henry, this Federal Convention, okay? And remember, look, I feel that I need to go back to the blur because you need to make these connections, guys. That it was about the Articles of Confederation to create a national government. So now we understand, after we read everything together, we understand that Edmund supports this, the author of passage 2. And he says that the Confederation should be replaced. You know, it wasn't effective. It wasn't a government. We need something new, a new project. While Patrick Henry, he was against the national government. And now, what is he saying? He's saying, as I was telling you here, that the Federal Convention ought to have amended. What does it mean, amend? Can you tell me, please? Amend as a verb?
Support.
What does it mean?
Support.
Fix. So he's saying that, okay, we had an old system. And the only purpose the Federal Convention had was just to fix the old system. For this purpose, they were solely delegated. The object of their mission, and now focus here, when he continues, he says, the objection of this mission extended to no other consideration. So they have nothing else to do. We had a system, they just needed to fix it. You must therefore forgive the solicitation of one unworthy member to know what danger could have arisen under the present confederation. And what are the causes of this proposal to change our government? So he's saying we should not change the government. Just you have a system, fix it. Okay? That's what he's saying here. So first of all, when we talk about the evidence, the lines must be where? 39 to 42. Okay? 39 to 42. He said that they had only this purpose, just to fix the old system. And that matches which idea? It matches the idea in B. They should not have proposed an entirely new form of government. They shouldn't have changed the form of the government. They should have just fixed the old system. And when you fix something, you keep most of it, you just fix what's wrong or what's not working. But here, he's against the idea that they wanted to change the whole thing. So the evidence is in C, lines, as I said, 39 to 42. And the idea that matches this evidence is in B, that these members of convention should not have proposed an entirely new form of government. They should have just fixed the old system. Anlaştık. Okay, and that leads us to the final passage. And here, in this passage, which is talking, of course, about a tangled tale of plant evolution, we have only 2 questions. And these 2 questions are 50 and 51. Is evidence for 49. Now, for 49, most of us chose the right answer, which is B, right? Scientists who specialized in linen were useful to Martin and Estevez because, and since we said that 49, the answer is B, then our evidence, first of all, let's read it, that this compound was found to contain features typically found in plants known to contain linen. Okay, so this element that we're talking about was found to contain features. Where are these features typically found? In plants that contain linen. What does it say, D? Some unexpected measurement results from tests for linen require special interpretation. Well, let me tell you why. Let's go to the evidence now, since it's going to help us understand the idea, and focus on the keywords. The question is now like this. Why were the scientists who specialize in linen were useful to these 2 researchers? Okay, so these 2 researchers were doing some work on the shore plants and how they are strong and how they can, you know, bear the circumstances where there is the waves and how they can not break down. They said that maybe there is linen, and linen, you know, it has some parts that make it flexible. So it takes more power as the waves hit the shore so they can live there. Of course, I'm telling you this from reading the passage. If you read the passage, of course, you would know that. Now, so let's go to these lines here, 33, 37. Now, and look, what I'm telling you here is actually in the same area. Like, look, they said, during high tides, waves pummel the alga with water velocities exceeding 20 meters per second, and with forces that exceed those generated by hurricane winds, which means, you know, the water is very strong and it's hitting the shore. And on this shore, we have these algae, right? So they were asking themselves, how could these algae survive here? They said the calcified or the rigid bodied, which means the hard part of the seaweed, had multiple non-calcified joints. Tamam? And these joints make it flexible, yet strong enough to handle that setting. Is everything clear so far? يا تسنيم?
Yes.
طيب ركزي معي الآن. So now they discovered that these algae, they have 2 parts. They have calcified parts, okay, and they are rigid, which means if the water hits very strongly, they will break, right? But at the same time, they were non-calcified joints. And these joints make this kind of alga flexible, but at the same time, strong enough to handle the setting. Now, when collaborator Jose Estevez at the Carnegie Institution for Science examined the joints, okay, what did he find? He saw secondary cell walls. And these cell walls are features that commonly found in land plants. تمام؟ عم نمشي خطوة خطوة. Remember, the question is not about all of this. The question was, we have scientists who are specialized in linen. Why were they useful to these 2 scientists, Estevez and the other one? So it's step by step. So as we said now, he saw secondary cell walls and these cell walls are usually found in land plants. That prompted Martin and Estevez to seek out experts in linen. And look, this is the first time now they mention the people who are specialized in linen. A molecule of a great research interest right now because its toughness impedes the use of some plants as sources of biofuel and animal feed. So now you ask yourself, why did they want, to seek help from these linen experts? Because this material, the linen, it's tough and it impedes the use of some plants as sources of biofuel and animal feed. So let's go back now to the question itself. So this is the area where they mentioned the linen experts, and that's why I said for 50 guys, the answer is C. These are the lines, okay? 33 to 37, this is where I was reading. Now, if we match it with the options that we have here, okay? So they were useful for what? Because they found that this material, that it contains features typically found in plants known to contain linen. What are these plants? They are land plants. Look, focus. Typically found in plants known to contain what? Linen. Perfect. Where is that part mentioned? Again, if we go back to these lines, what did they say? They said that he saw secondary cell walls, features commonly found in land plants. Okay? And that's why they needed the linen. Now, of course, we might need a little bit more evidence if you want. And the evidence is here, if you want to continue. John Ralph and colleagues at the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Great Lakes Bioenergy Research Center detected what? Linen. In what? In this compound we're talking about. So they confirmed what they were saying. As a researcher, I found secondary cell walls, and I was surprised because I would not find that in an alga, which is on the shore. I would find it, for example, in a land plant. That's why they needed the people who were, experts in linen. And these people, when they, studied these algae, they detected the linen in that compound. They found it. That's why they were useful to them. Because simply they are experts in linen and they detected linen in that compound, and that would support what they are saying in the secondary cell walls, right?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. But here's the thing. Since I read the lines that we have in 42 to 45, why didn't we choose these? Because these lines 42 to 45 are telling us that they found the linen. Perfect. But the question is not about whether they found linen in this material or not. The question was, why were they useful to them? And the lines 42 to 45, they don't tell us that. They just said, John Ralph and colleagues at this university research center, they detected, which means they found linen in this material. Perfect. Does that tell me why they were useful? No. These lines are just telling me that they found lining. That's it. So you need the previous lines because they tell us the connection between the secondary cell walls, and that prompted, that encouraged. This is the issue that made Martin and Estevez to seek out the experts in linen. So this is the exact specific thing that we can learn here. Okay, and then we have question number 51, which is asking us about the word strong. Come on, guys. You don't know what strong means? Seriously? Let's go to line 76. But again, remember, we have context. So we start from the beginning of the paragraph, and it says, Carl J. Nicholas, a Cornell University botanist, considers Martin's evidence for linen exceptionally strong. So strong, of course, is an adjective. What is it describing here? Can you tell me what it is describing? What is strong?
Evidence.
Perfect. So the evidence is strong. And again, if you look at the options that you are provided with, Vigorous, for example, means it's strong, but I cannot use vigorous for evidence. Why? Because vigorous means strict, and you cannot say strict evidence, can you? Not really. Or distinctive evidence. So now we just ask ourselves, what does it mean impervious? Any idea?
Indestructible.
Yes, exactly. And most of the time, it's like waterproof or fluid proof. It doesn't allow fluid to pass through. Okay, or it's not affected by something. But again, I cannot use that to describe evidence. So remember, vigorous can be strong in one way. Impervious, it can be also, it can mean strong in a different way. But I'm describing evidence. So what is the answer now? Of course, as you can see here, the only evidence that we have here, sorry, the only word that we have here left is compelling. Now we ask ourselves, what does it mean compelling? It means it's strong, but in what way? Look, it means not able to be refuted, not able to be resisted. Convincing, persuasive, that's what compelling means. It means convincing, persuasive, not able to be argued or refuted or opposed or challenged. And that works for the word evidence, doesn't it? So again, maybe it's just because of the other words like vigorous and impervious, no worries. Add them to your list, study them, because you might find them again in other practice tests or even on the actual test that you're gonna do. That's how you learn. You take notes, you learn from your mistakes, and you just keep going. Okay, guys. So for me, that's it for today. We discussed all the questions that, you know, based on your answers, I found that we need to discuss them. On Thursday, inshallah, we're gonna discuss the writing section as well. So that's it. See you on Thursday, inshallah. Goodbye.